The business is we're an IT managed services company, so we help companies leverage technology to the benefit of their organization. So our goal is to not necessarily sell them technology, it's how to show them how to use it to improve their operations and their bottom line performance. I started the business primarily to earn some money when I was in college. It was actually the second company I had started. I started a company while in high school doing much the same. And interesting, when I graduated from high school, I wanted to go to college. I had a business partner who did not want to go to college. He decided that we were making too much money in our high school business. And while we had an opportunity to sell the company when I left for college, being 50-50 partners, I learned my first partner lesson. He didn't want to, so I couldn't force him to sell the company. So, much to the chagrin of my parents, he wanted to buy me out. And so the plan was he was going to make payments to me over my years of college. Got 2 payments, and then by about month 4, was getting calls from debt collectors because he had unfortunately run the business into the ground, and I was still partner, so I was obligated to part of that debt. So what we didn't have was an established buy-sell agreement, a way for the partnership for one partner to exit if they wanted to do. So certainly when I started Artemis, one of the first things we did was found a good relationship with an attorney and a CPA, and made sure that when I started Artemis, I had 2 partners actually that I met in college, and we had a buy-sell agreement established. And it's always easier to do that when you're friends and you're optimistic about the growth of the business, but you can agree on what it might look like if somebody wanted to exit. Something we took advantage of when we were starting the company, which in the late 90s, we were able to leverage the .com explosion in terms of attracting investors and customers. Interestingly, note on that is one of the challenges folks often would say is you're starting your company, you were so young, the people were so young. How did you gain confidence of business owners to be willing to basically allow young 20-somethings to do things that were going to impact their business? And because of all the visibility in public in around .com, it was sort of seen as this young space, young tech, so helped us overcome that. However, in the early 2000s, the .com bubble sort of burst. And we were still a pretty young business. We had gained some nice customers, but as that burst, what happened is very quickly some of those accounts began to start having a hard time paying. And one of the first painful lessons we learned was that we had certainly overextended ourselves from giving credit to customers. They started paying much slower, and only way that we could survive that, frankly, was we ended up having to do layoffs for the first time, which was probably still is the most painful thing I've ever had to do as a business owner, is to let someone go, not for their work performance, but simply because you feel like you've failed them in terms of your operations of the business. And especially when we were starting a company, a bunch of tech individuals, we understood the technology, we were focused on how we could use technology to solve business problems, and frankly, weren't paying near as close attention to the business side of the organization. There were several milestones for the business. Certainly an interesting one, the first probably milestone for me was graduating college. 5 years ago, we went through a merger with another local company about our same size. And that was a pretty interesting milestone because the acquisition that we had done in the early 2000s was really an acquisition. We were buying a smaller company. We were able to bring them in and directly integrate them into our services. And while there were certainly pain points going through that process, it was a lot different when we decided to merge with a company roughly our same size. But we learned some interesting lessons through that process because there was no clear leader in terms of one way was better because we were roughly the same size. We spent way too much time trying to figure out how to integrate the two systems rather than focusing on pick a system and move it forward. We've set a goal over the next 10 years to double the size of the company again, to expand our services throughout Central Florida. That will come with likely a few satellite offices and probably some additional acquisitions. So from a strategic perspective, we certainly have our eyes set on growth and growth throughout the Central Florida region. On the technical side, we do see a continued further adoption of leveraging cloud technologies, of leveraging mobile technologies. And in the immediate future, a lot of focus on security. Getting the company going early on, I was the technical guy, I was the salesperson, I was really running everything within the business. And as we began to grow, it took me a while to recognize that I was the bottleneck within our organization, simply because it's your baby, and especially I think when you found something and you start it from nothing and build it up, it can be difficult to let go of certain areas and recognize that maybe the limiting factor in the next evolution of your business, frankly, if you look in the mirror, is yourself. And, as I began to recognize that, and I had done, I think, a pretty good job of building a good team around me, but finally being willing to allow them the reins to step out and begin to make some of those management decisions, to do some things, and not always the way that I would do it. And frankly, it's caused us some pain points along the way. But ultimately, if you build a team around you that is willing, that people are in the right seats, they're loyal to the organization, loyal to the mission of the organization, being willing to allow them to do that, that recognition for us is really, I think, what transitioned us from being a 10 or a 12 person company and allowed us to move, to now being, over 50. And very quickly you can find yourself spending 60, 70, 80 hours a week sometimes, working and driving this. And a lot of times that's what's necessary in order to get the business going. But you also have to find an outlet. You have to find something else that also allows you to get your mind thinking about things that aren't the business, so that you don't get blinders on, and a way for you to recharge. What I found was for me to engage in the community, and it gave me an opportunity to interact with other business people, with nonprofits, people that have completely different things going on in their lives, and I'm able to engage on those boards, help provide advice that I may see. I get advice from them. We've been blessed by this community. They've embraced us. They've embraced our business, and it feels good to have an opportunity to give back to the community in whatever way that is. I tell them, it may not be monetary. It may be time. It may be advice. At some point, maybe it's all three. And so having that opportunity for us, means a lot to be able to support this community in all of those ways.